Hachiman Hikigaya is a practical person who prefers to be alone. He writes an essay expressing his thoughts on the lives of teenagers today. Unfortunately, his language teacher, Shizuka Hiratsuka, is not pleased with his essay. As a punishment, she makes Hachiman join the Sabu High School Service Club. The club only has one member, Yukino Yukinoshita, and Shizuka hopes that Yukino can help improve Hachiman's social skills. The two students immediately clash with each other. Shizuka suggests that they settle their differences by helping people who come to the club for assistance. Hachiman agrees to this challenge. The next day, Hachiman learns that Yukino has become an outcast despite her beauty. He can relate to her because she thinks differently from others. They start to understand each other better. Later on, Yui Uegahama asks the service club for help in baking cookies for a friend. Yukino tries to teach Yui the basics of cooking, but she struggles. Hachiman decides to take a different approach. He uses psychology to make Yui realize that the act of doing something for someone else is more important than the final result. In the following week, Yukino and Hachiman discuss Yui's request and how it relates to personal growth. They talk about the value of striving for improvement, even if there's a risk of failure. They both have different perspectives but respect each other's views. Soon after their conversation, Yui visits the club and expresses her gratitude to Hachiman and Yukino. She brings homemade cookies that she made herself as a way of saying thank you. Shizuka once again scolds Hachiman for basing his biology report on his dissatisfaction with how social groups establish a hierarchy. Later that day, Yumiko Miura pressures Yui to give a straightforward excuse when she wants to have lunch with Yukino instead of their usual social group. When Yukino arrives and asks Yui why she's late, Yui apologizes and Yukino forgives her. However, Yumiko gets angry when Yui pays more attention to Yukino, showing her self-centeredness. This creates tension, and the other students leave the scene. Yui takes the opportunity to explain that meeting Hachiman and Yukino helped her realize she can be her own person and not do things just to please others. Yumiko accepts her explanation. The next afternoon, a teenager named Yoshiteru Zemokuza, who has a vivid imagination, comes to the service club for help. After beating around the bush to understand his flashy personality, Yoshiteru asks them to review a light novel he wrote. Hachiman and Yukino stay up all night reading his novel and give their critiques the next day, which are not very positive. Despite the service club's honest feedback, Yoshiteru sincerely accepts their words and promises to have them review his next piece of writing. Yui interrupts Hachiman while he's having lunch at his favorite spot, and excitedly tells him about her growing friendship with Yukino. Later, during gym class, Hachiman plays tennis with Saika Totsuka and they have a good time. Saika eventually asks Hachiman to join the tennis club. Hachiman decides to ask Yukino for her opinion on the matter during their next service club meeting. However, before Hachiman can discuss it with Yukino, Saika shows up and asks for their help in practicing tennis for the next few days. They agree to help him. During one of their practice sessions during lunchtime, Yumiko and her group want to use the tennis court and ignore the fact that Saika has permission to use it. Hayato Hayama suggests settling the issue with a doubles match. The winner would get to use the court. The match begins with Hachiman and Yui facing off against Hayato and Yumiko. However, Yui ends up spraining her ankle and is replaced by Yukino. Before the match, there's some banter between Yumiko and Yukino. Yukino starts dominating the game but eventually runs out of stamina and passes the game on to Hachiman. Hachiman uses his knowledge of the sea breezes and hits the ball in a high arc during his last two serves, winning the game. However, the spectators don't pay much attention to the service club's victory because Hayato saves Yumiko from getting injured by the final serve. While walking to school, Hachiman and his sister Komashi Hikigaya talk about a car accident that happened on what was supposed to be his first day of high school. They discuss the incident and its impact on Hachiman. Later, Shizuka scolds Hachiman for his choice of future career and reminds him about choosing a 3-person group for an upcoming workplace field trip. Hachiman needs to decide who he wants to go with. The service club receives a mysterious text message that is shared among them. Hayato asks the service club for help in stopping the message, which portrays his friends Kakeru, Yamato, and Oka as troublemakers. The service club realizes that the message is related to the field trip and deduces that one of the 3 wants to eliminate the others to form a group with Hayato. Hachiman and Yui take turns gathering information, but Yui struggles to be subtle and fails to obtain useful information. Hachiman starts observing Hayato's group until Saika interrupts him. However, the mystery is solved when Hayato joins their conversation. Hachiman explains the strong bond between Kakeru, Yamato, and Oka and suggests that Hayato removes himself from their group to give them a chance to strengthen their friendship. Hayato thanks Hachiman by choosing to go with him, and Saika for the field trip. Shizuka scolds Hachiman for arriving late to after-school classes. Feeling down, he goes to a local cafe where he runs into Yui, Yukino, and Saika. Later, Hachiman's sister, Komashi, and her friend Taishi Kawasaki join them. Taishi shares his concern about his sister, Saki Kawasaki, going out late at night. the service club decides to investigate the matter. The next day, the club tries different approaches to reach out to Saki, but all their attempts fail. With Komoshi's help, they discover that Saki works at a cafe at night. They eventually find her at a fancy bar in a Chiba hotel. Tensions rise when Saki and Yukino have a confrontation, because Saki lied about her age to get the job. The service club decides to leave. The following morning, Saki meets with the group, and they learn that she has been saving money for college. Komoshi points out that Saki shouldn't have worried Taishi. Hachiman suggests that she should apply for a scholarship instead. Later, Komoshi shocks Hachiman by revealing that Yui is the owner of the dog he saved during the car accident. Thinking that Yui only befriended him out of guilt, Hachiman ends their friendship during the field trip. Yui stops attending the service club meetings and seems to have completely withdrawn after her previous encounter with Hachiman. Shizuka assigns them the task of recruiting a new third member for the club. Yukino suggests that they should try to bring Yui back by celebrating her birthday. On the weekend, they go to the mall to look for a birthday present for Yui, but they struggle to find something suitable. Eventually, they decide to buy trendy accessories for her. During their shopping trip, they unexpectedly run into Yukino's older sister, Yukino Yukinoshita, who playfully teases them with her transparent personality. To their surprise, Yui also shows up, and Yukino invites her to the next service club meeting. At the next meeting, Yukino explains to Yui that they wanted to celebrate her birthday, and show their gratitude for everything she has done for the club. Hachiman takes the opportunity to clear the air with Yui, and tells her that she doesn't owe him anything, so she shouldn't feel sorry for him. Yui argues that she never saw herself as pitying him, but the situation becomes complex, leaving her at a loss for words. However, Yukino helps mend the rift between them by sincerely suggesting that they leave behind their current situation and start a new path together. They all agree to take this new approach. During the summer break, Hachiman tries to relax and ignores the messages from Shizuka about the service club's activities. However, Shizuka eventually convinces him to join her and the rest of the Sabu High students for a few days at a prefectural park in Chiba. They are there to oversee a summer camp for elementary school students. During an orienteering event, Hachiman and Yukino witness the other kids intentionally excluding a young girl named Rumi Tsurumi. Despite Hayato's attempts to help, the situation remains unresolved. Rumi senses something similar in Hachiman and Yukino, and decides to confide in them. Yukino adds that the problem will likely worsen once Rumi enters middle school with the same group of people. That evening, the Sabu group discusses how to help Rumi. However, tensions rise when Yukino dismisses an idea suggested by Yumiko due to her lack of experience in dealing with someone like Rumi. Unable to sleep, Hachiman goes for a walk in the woods and unexpectedly finds Yukino there. She shares her desire to help Rumi, seeing similarities between Rumi and Yui, as well as acknowledging the complicated history between herself and Hayato. They eventually go back to bed. Meanwhile, Rumi, unable to sleep as well, sits by a stream, gazing at the stars. The summer camp continues, and Shizuka asks the Sabu group to organize a test of courage and a bonfire event for the evening. After making the necessary preparations, the girls from Sabu High relax by a nearby river. Rumi joins Hachiman on the riverbank, where he discusses the diminishing likelihood of maintaining friendships from elementary school as one grows older. However, Rumi reveals that she has already given up on making friends because she believes her peers will treat her the same way she treats them. To help Rumi, Hachiman proposes that they create a conflict within the peer group that shuns her. This would expose their true loyalties to one another and break their ties, shifting the focus away from Rumi. The plan appears to work during the Test of Courage event, as the girls' allegiances are revealed, but Rumi ends up saving them in a dramatic turn of events. Later, during the bonfire event, the Sabu group acknowledges that Hachiman's unconventional plan had caused the girls to betray each other, leading to a slight improvement in Rumi's situation. The camp comes to an end the following day, and when Haruno arrives to pick up Yukino, Yui and Hachiman recognize the Yukinoshita family's limousine as the one that was involved in the accident that Hachiman was in. Yui expresses her gratitude to Hachiman and Komoshi by inviting them to the annual summer fireworks festival. However, Komoshi decides to give Hachiman and Yui a chance to go together and backs out of the offer. On the day of the festival, Hachiman and Yui try to ease the awkwardness of their first outing by shopping for some items for Komoshi. As the fireworks display begins, Hachiman and Yui search for a spot to watch and unexpectedly run into Haruno. Haruno takes this opportunity to shed some light on the complex relationship between herself and Yukino, expressing her concern that Yukino struggles to form meaningful connections with people. Towards the end of the festival, Haruno mistakenly brings up Yukino's involvement in the accident, but Hachiman brushes it off as something that belongs in the past. Afterward, Hachiman accompanies Yui home, and she shares her thoughts about not wanting to keep their feelings bottled up. She admits that even without the accident, she would have wanted to be friends with Hachiman, but he rejects this notion based on his own reasoning. However, as school resumes the following week, Hachiman begins to despise himself for believing that Yukino was incapable of lying. He recalls that in the first episode, she had claimed not to know who he was, leading him to question his previous assumption. Shizuka volunteers Hachiman to represent Class 2F in the Cultural Festival Committee, and later Hayama suggests that Minami Sagami be the female representative. Minami takes it a step further by volunteering to be the committee chair to work on her personal growth. She then asks Yukino to be her vice president and help her with the chairing duties. Surprisingly, Yukino proves to be exceptionally skilled at managing the festival tasks, surpassing Minami's expectations. Meanwhile, Hina Ebina takes charge of organizing a stage production, and Haruno attempts to apply for a musical performance. Minami suggests that the committee members enjoy the process of preparing for the festival, while Yukino argues that prioritizing logistical work is crucial. However, more than half of the committee members follow Minami's suggestion, and abandon the remaining members, leaving them with a daunting workload and piles of paperwork. The next day, Yukino takes on the majority of the work and handles it efficiently. When Hayato criticizes her for taking on too much, Hachiman redirects the blame towards the members who deserted their responsibilities. Afterward, Minami passes most of her duties to Yukino, and starts helping other classes in the school. Burdened with an overwhelming amount of paperwork, Yukino takes it home and fails to show up at school the following day. Hachiman and Yui visit Yukino, and discover that she has exhausted herself by taking on the majority of the festival work. Yui scolds her for not relying on them more, and Hachiman supports her argument by explaining that in an ideal world, people should depend on each other. However, he admits that he's unsure if relying on others would always be the right choice. The following day, the festival committee gathers to brainstorm slogans that promote a sense of unity. Hachiman cleverly suggests a slogan using the kanji for people to draw attention to the unfair division of labor caused by Minami's actions. His bold move earns him the contempt of the rest of the committee, who quickly gather to refute his words. The Sabu High School Cultural Festival finally arrives, and Minami struggles with stage fright during her opening speech. Despite this setback, the rest of the festival turns out to be a tremendous success, especially Hina's yaoi stage production, which garners much attention. Later, Hachiman takes a break, and Yui joins him for lunch. She reveals that she has decided to wait for Yukino to open up to her, but she also expresses her determination to strengthen her bond with Hachiman. Meanwhile, Minami locks herself in the bathroom, overwhelmed by embarrassment. The cultural festival at Sabu High School continues, and Hachiman finds himself fulfilling his committee duties by documenting the events on film. Komashi, Hachiman's sister, unexpectedly arrives and is surprised to see him taking some responsibility. As the festival reaches its final stages, Haruno captivates the audience with a magnificent orchestra performance. However, as the time for the closing ceremony approaches, Meguri informs the group that Minami is missing. Since Minami is supposed to deliver the closing speech, they decide to buy some time while Hachiman searches the school campus for her. After a search, Hachiman eventually discovers Minami on the rooftop of the laboratory building. He realizes that she is sulking because Yukino stole the limelight from her despite asking for her help. Hayato and Minami's friends arrive, attempting to convince her to leave, but she refuses. Seeing no other option, Hachiman cleverly uses reverse psychology and Minami's social reality to guilt her into fulfilling her duty, much to Hayato's anger. With Minami back on board, the festival comes to an end. Yui, Yukino, Haruno, and Shizuka give an extra musical performance, followed by Minami delivering her closing speech. The reactions to Hachiman's actions are mixed, but Shizuka praises him for always finding ways to rescue people from their problems, even though it saddens her that he sacrifices himself in the process. Later that evening, in the service club room, Hachiman and Yukino reflect on how well they have come to know each other. Yukino hints that they have become friends. Eventually, Yui arrives at the club and invites them to an after-party hosted by Hayato to celebrate the success of the festival. Hachiman concludes by contemplating that although there are no second chances in life, their ideals and perspectives on society may continue to be seen as unconventional. Sabu High School holds its annual athletic festival, and Hachiman finds ways to justify his lack of interest by reinterpreting a speech by Pierre de Coubertin. Sometime before the festival, Meguri Shirongiri asks the service club for help in planning her final athletic event at the school. They agree, and together they brainstorm event ideas. However, Shizuka dismisses most of their suggestions due to the social sensitivity surrounding them. Hachiman decides to seek the creativity of Yoshiteru and Hina, and they make progress with the preparations. When the festival finally begins, the white team takes an early lead over the red team. But the tides turn when Yukino and the girls from the red team emerge victorious in their historically themed event. Later, Hachiman participates in the male pole drop event. He cleverly uses Yoshiteru as a distraction, disguises himself as a white team player, and gets closer to the pole. However, Hayato and his group intervene. Hachiman reveals his strategy of diverting Hayato's attention, allowing Yoshiteru to charge at the pole and secure a win for the red team. After the festival, the service club discusses Hachiman's tactics, which ultimately led to the disqualification of the red team. Despite this, they resolve to do their best in the next athletic festival, determined to improve their performance. A few days after the high school athletics festival, the students begin to talk excitedly about an upcoming trip to Kyoto. The service club is talking about the trip when suddenly, classmates Hayato Hayama and Kakeru Tobe interrupts. They want help with Kakeru's crush on Hina Abina. Hachiman Hikigaya agrees to help and talks about the risks of asking someone out in a practical and straightforward manner. The next day, fellow service club member Yui Uegahama suggests using the field trip to help with the request, but Hina interrupts. She talks about how their relationships are changing and encourages Hachiman to be more social. Finally, the Sabo High students arrive in Kyoto. Unfortunately, Hachiman and Yui don't make much progress with helping Kakeru. Later, Hachiman updates Yukino Yukinoshita on the request. But when they see their teacher Shizuka Hiratsuka trying to sneak out of the hotel, she asks them to keep it a secret and gives them some comforting words. The first day of the field trip ends with Hachiman walking with Yukino around the hotel. On the second day of the Kyoto trip, Hachiman bumps into Yumiko Miura at a convenience store. He learns that Hina had turned down all her admirers, and Yumiko seems content with how things are in their group. The next day, when the Sabu students arrive in Arashiyama, Hayato opens up to Hachiman in an unusual way. He shares his worries about how Kakeru's confession might affect their friend group's harmony, and reluctantly asks Hachiman to help preserve it. Later that night, as the Sabu students quietly watch Kakeru confess to Hina, Hachiman takes a risk. He intervenes and pretends to confess to Hina, who turns him down, saying she wants to stay single for now. Kakeru thanks Hachiman for sparing him from the embarrassment of rejection, and leaves with Hayato and the others. Even though Hachiman saved their peer group from falling apart, Yukino expresses her disapproval of his actions, and Yui tearfully scolds him for not realizing how his unconventional problem-solving methods can hurt those who care about him. However, the next day, Hina thanks Hachiman for helping maintain the status quo in their peer group. When school resumes, the students of class go back to their usual routine, ignoring what happened during the field trip. However, there's noticeable tension between Hachiman and Yukino in the service club. Neguri Shiromiri and Iroha Ishiki interrupt the club and ask for help with a unique problem. Iroha was nominated as a prank for the student council president election, and they want to help her lose. Hachiman suggests a plan involving a censure motion against Iroha to solve the request, but this idea angers Yukino, who finds this plan dishonorable, and her perspective clashes with Hachiman's unconventional thinking. Later, Yukino asks Shizuka to check on the status of the club contest, and reminds Hachiman about the risks of his methods. After school, Hachiman unexpectedly meets Haruno Yukinoshita and his middle school acquaintances, Kaori Orimoto and Chika Nakamachi. During the next service club meeting, Hachiman criticizes Yukino's plan, arguing that it doesn't consider potential future problems if Iroha still gets elected. Yukino, in turn, criticizes Hachiman's methods, leading him to leave the meeting. Iroha later approaches Hachiman and expresses concern about the state of the service club, and he assures her that they will find a solution together. Later, Hayato invites Hachiman to spend some time with Kaori, Chika, and himself on a weekend, but Hachiman initially declines as expected. However, after some pressure from Haruno, he reconsiders. So, one afternoon, the four of them go out together, and the girls from Kaihin High School keep teasing Hachiman throughout the outing. The situation escalates at a local cafe, where Hayato passionately defends Hachiman's character against the girls. Afterward, Yukino expresses her disapproval of being manipulated by Hayato into supporting his argument with the girls, instead of discussing the election. Haruno only makes things worse by observing the whole incident. In the aftermath, Hayato apologizes for creating an uncomfortable situation, explaining that he wanted Hachiman to see the flaws in his self-sacrificial approach. This upsets Hachiman, who argues that the consequences of his choices are his responsibility and should not be a concern for others. The next day, Yukino decides to run in the election against Iroha as a way to solve her request. This decision puts the future of the service club at risk if Yukino wins, since she would not be able to be the president of the service club if she wins the student council election. Yui also decides to enter the election in an attempt to preserve the service club in case Yukino somehow wins. Hachiman feels uneasy about the choices his club members have made, and feels that they have overcomplicated the request. Hachiman decides to open up to his sister, Komashi Hikigaya, about recent events. She offers some comforting words and then asks him to find a way to keep both Yukino and Yui in the service club. The next afternoon, Hachiman meets with Yoshiteru Zamokusa, Saika Tatsuka, Saki Kawasaki, and Komashi to brainstorm ideas for dealing with the student council election. They help Hachiman realize that his initial censure motion proposal was a mistake, as it would have damaged the one thing Iroha cares about the most, her self-image. Hachiman then has Saki create a list of potential candidates, and Yoshiteru uses these names to create an anonymous social media campaign. The following day, Hachiman manages to persuade Iroha to accept the presidential position. He uses a combination of social media statistics and clever reverse psychology to highlight the benefits of the role. Later, Hachiman presents the statistics to Yui and Yukino but keeps the fact that he falsified the data a secret. He uses it as a way to convince them that they no longer need to run because Iroha is likely to win. Yui thanks Hachiman, showing some understanding for his methods. In the end, Iroha wins the election uncontested, and in a landslide, and the service club's request is fulfilled. Meanwhile, the service club makes an extra effort to maintain their usual atmosphere after the recent events that have caused trouble with their group. This prompts Hachiman to put on a brave face with his fellow club members, inspired by what he observed in Hayato's group. However, their pretense is disrupted when Iroha approaches the club and asks for their help in planning a joint Christmas event with Kaihin General, the nearby girls' school. Yukino becomes tense, leading Hachiman to decline the request on behalf of the club. Instead, he takes it on as a personal favor to Iroha, aiming to keep up the appearance of normalcy with Yukino. Later that day, Hachiman meets with the Sabu and Kaihin student councils at the local community center to begin organizing the event. While Hachiman struggles to understand the jargon used by the Kaihin members, Iroha blindly accepts their ideas based solely on their official presentation, much to the annoyance of her fellow Sabu High members. The following day, Hachiman attempts to communicate an idea using the Kaihin terminology, but it backfires, leading to misunderstandings and the chaos of organization. Frustrated and making no progress, Kaori approaches Hachiman and mocks him when she discovers his membership in the service club. One afternoon, Yui expresses her concern about the state of the service club. Later, when Iroha doesn't show up for the meeting between the two schools, Hachiman goes looking for her. This leads to an unplanned conversation with Hayato about their reactions to helping others. When Iroha finally arrives, they discover that Tamanawa had assigned some of the work to grade schoolers. Hachiman tries to convince Tamanawa to start narrowing down ideas, but Tamanawa insists that everyone should contribute some aspect to the Christmas event. An unexpected encounter with Saika later makes Hachiman reconsider his preconceived ideals about helping others. During the next meeting, Hachiman realizes that he has essentially become the de facto leader of the Sabu High Council. This prompts him to once again attempt to get Tamanawa to streamline the ideas so that Iroha can better understand what needs to be done. Meanwhile, Hachiman also helps Rumi Tsurumi finish the decorations, and reflects on how his previous methods have negatively affected others. Later, he crosses paths with Yukino. Knowing that he has been assisting Iroha with her request, Yukino explains that he doesn't have to constantly look out for both her and Yui. She offers him a leave of absence from club activities to ease the burden on him. One day, Shizuka notices Hachiman as he's about to head home after his unexpected encounter with Yukino. He shares his concerns about the troubled state of recent events. Shizuka doesn't waste any time and goes straight to the root of his emotional problem. She explains that his efforts to protect Yukino and Yui have actually been the cause of the divide within the service club. She suggests that he take some time to reflect on his feelings and understand what he was truly trying to achieve. The following day, Hachiman takes Shizuka's advice to heart. He approaches Yui and Yukino, admitting the mess his plans had created. Yukino, sticking to her usual defensive nature, declines his request for help. Yui, with tears in her eyes, points out the unfairness of Yukino's reluctance to open up. However, Yukino counters by chastising Yui for also concealing her true feelings. Hachiman then has a moment of realization about what Shizuka meant by not merely voicing one's feelings. He fights back tears as he reveals his genuine desire to understand the emotions of those around him. His uncharacteristic display of vulnerability leads to a clash with Yukino's inability to discern a person's true emotional state, and she runs away to the school rooftop. Hachiman and Yui follow her, and Yui's plea for them to be more open with each other resonates with Yukino. She decides to help Hachiman, marking a turning point in their relationship. Later, Hachiman briefs Yukino and Yui about the upcoming meeting between Sabu High and Kaihin General before they all attend with Iroha. Yukino gets a first-hand look at the chaotic state of the Christmas event preparations. Together, they decide to seek guidance from Shizuka. Shizuka suggests a brainstorming session for Christmas-themed event ideas at the Destiny Land amusement park. Yui invites Hayato, Yumiko, Hina, and Kakeru to join them. The group kicks off the event by taking photos, going on a space-themed ride, and enjoying a panda bear-themed attraction. Hachiman observes Iroha's attempts to flirt with Hayato during the panda ride. The service club takes a break at a gift shop to pick out presents for Komashi. Yui seizes the opportunity to playfully tease Yukino about her feelings for Hachiman. Later on, Hachiman and Yukino accidentally get separated from the others while heading to another ride. Yukino begins to open up to Hachiman about her complex relationship with her sister, Haruno. She shares that she often thinks about the qualities Haruno possesses and why she lacks them, extending this line of thought to include Hachiman. Eventually, they reunite with the rest of the group to watch the fireworks show. Amid the distractions, Hachiman notices Iroha and Hayato. He sees Iroha confess her feelings, but then run away in tears after being rejected. Iroha insists that Hachiman give her a ride home after her rejection by Hayato. During the ride, she reveals that his recent outburst in the service club had pushed her to take action prematurely with her feelings. Some time later, Hachiman arranges a meeting between the student council and the service club. He suggests they strongly advocate for a significant change in the two schools meeting to prevent a disaster at the Christmas event. At the next meeting, the Sabu students put this tactic into action. When Tamanawa rejects their ideas, Hachiman calls them out on their fear of taking responsibility and their inability to handle it, a point further emphasized by Yukino. This prompts the desired response, and they eventually agree on a musical performance and stage play. On the day of the Christmas event, Iroha takes the lead, and the event turns out to be a tremendous success. The members of the service club celebrate the new year a week later. During the celebration, Hachiman advises Yukino to spend time with her family during the season. The following day, Hachiman and Yui go shopping for Yukino's birthday, and coincidentally encounter Haruno and Hayato while waiting for their parents. Haruno then calls Yukino over from home, much to Yukino's annoyance. The strained family dynamics become evident when their mother arrives. Days later, the senior students begin considering their future academic paths, with many leaning toward liberal arts. However, their focus shifts to a rumor regarding Yukino and Hayato. This leads Yumiko to visit the service club, where she tearfully expresses her fear of growing distant from Hayato because he hasn't shared his future plans with their peer group. Hachiman attempts to confront Hayato directly about his choice, but fails. He also tries indirectly through Haruno when she arrives at Sabu High to assist the student council. However, both efforts are unsuccessful. Hachiman decides to use the annual winter event marathon race to his advantage. He provokes Hayato by using the stress of the event to push him toward choosing the sciences. Unexpectedly, this triggers Hayato's inferiority complex towards Hachiman, and he decides to do the opposite of Hachiman's advice. Hayato ultimately wins the marathon and dispels the rumor by thanking Yumiko and Iroha for their support. While Yukino tends to Hachiman's scrapes after the race, they share a moment of romantic tension, discreetly observed by Yui. At the after-party, Hayato apologizes to Yukino for the rumor. Later, Hayato explains to Hachiman that he didn't want to reveal his choice because the influence of his peer group would have taken it out of his hands, undermining his pride in making the decision for his future himself. Hachiman meets with Haruno one day after being summoned by her. He discovers that the Yukino they've all come to know might just be a persona she created. As Valentine's Day approaches, the Sabu students become excited about it. Hina and Saki seek help from the service club in making homemade chocolates, joined by Iroha and Yumiko, who plan to give theirs to Hayato. Since Hayato has decided not to accept chocolates from anyone, Hachiman realizes they need a reason to compel him to accept the gifts. This leads Iroha to involve the student council in organizing a joint cooking class event with Kaihin General. The event turns out to be a great success, bringing everyone closer together. Shizuka expresses her satisfaction with Hachiman's personal growth since expanding his social circle. Later, Yukino and Yui present Hachiman with their chocolates, but Haruno disrupts their moment by suggesting it's all a facade. As the three walk home that night, they unexpectedly encounter Yukino's mother. Yui and Hachiman catch a glimpse of Yukino's struggle for individuality within her family's shadow. This leaves Hachiman with the impression that they all have yet to discover their true selves hidden behind their personas. One day, Haruno intercepts the service club while they're on their way home one afternoon. She criticizes Yukino for not making independent life choices, despite the Yukinoshita family giving her considerable freedom. Yui steps in and suggests that Yukino spend the night at the Yurigahama residence to let things cool down between the Yukinoshita sisters. The next day, while Komashi goes for her Sabu entrance examinations, Yui invites Hachiman and Yukino to Kasai Rinkai Park. They spend the day at the aquarium, bonding over their different personalities while observing various aquatic creatures. The three of them react to the close bond between a pair of penguins, and Yukino subtly alludes to her own sense of detachment. Yui eventually reveals the true reason she invited them out. As the day nears its end, she brings up her initial service club request, taking responsibility for the strained bonds between them, and she suggests they continue pretending to have a blissful status quo. However, Hachiman interjects, proposing that it's better to endure their uncertainties than live a lie. The girls agree to his compromise, and Yukino decides to take Hachiman's request seriously for the three of them to understand each other and their feelings towards each other better to save the service club. After their recent visit to Kasai Rinkai Park, Hachiman thinks about how he, Yukino, and Yui can solve the problems in their relationship. They talk about Yui's cookies, and then Hachiman asks Yukino to share her request. Yukino wants to make her own path in life instead of following her family's footsteps. She asks Hachiman and Yui to support her in becoming more independent. Yukino plans to move back to her family's home and make things right with them. Hachiman and Yui agree to help her, and they all go to Yukino's apartment. There, they meet Yukino's older sister Haruno, but she happens to be drunk during their visit, so the three aren't ready to confront her yet. Although Yukino tells her sister that she has something important to share soon, The next day, Hachiman checks on his younger sister Komachi, who's getting ready for an interview for his high school. He agrees to meet her at the Marimpia shopping center after her exam. While waiting, he runs into his classmate Saki Kawasaki and her younger sister Keika. After noticing him, Saki reluctantly invites him to eat with them, and Hachiman ends up buying Keika chocolate treats. This annoys Saki since she doesn't want her sister to be spoiled. Afterwards, they talk about the pressure from the upcoming entrance exams and the difficulty of having younger siblings. Eventually, Komachi arrives, who enthusiastically greets Saki, and while she watches the siblings interact, this brings up memories Saki has of Hachiman. Eventually, Saki and Keika leave and Hachiman goes shopping with Komachi. Komachi wants to help with chores to make up for not doing them while studying for her exams. Then she thanks her brother for his support, which brings tears to Hachiman's eyes. Back at Yukino's apartment, Yukino and her friends decide to have a serious discussion with her sister Haruno. With Hachiman and Yui supporting her, Yukino gets the courage to tell Haruno that she has decided to go back to her family, since her sister won't listen to her if she is sober. Yukino thinks that the troubled relationship in her family is the root of all their problems, and that Yukino needs to talk to their mom about her future. Eventually, Haruno agrees and even promises to help Yukino talk to their mother. Afterwards, Yukino starts packing to go home and Yui offers to help. Haruno offers to let Yui stay the night, and the two friends start packing as Hachiman leaves with Haruno to go to the convenience store. In reality, Haruno wanted to get Hachiman out of the apartment alone to talk to him. As they make their way to the store, she tells him that she truly wants to support her younger sister's wishes even if she feels she hasn't been the best older sister. She also asks Hachiman to take care of Yukino. The next day, Hayama talks to Hachiman and mentions that Haruno told him about what happened yesterday. He notices that Yukino has started to change slightly. After class, during the club meeting, Iroha comes to the club room and suggests organizing a prom party for the next year's graduation. Iroha shows them a movie about prom and tries to get them excited for the event. She also expresses her desire to be elected prom queen, even though Hachiman dryly points out that due to elections being a popularity contest, Hayama would definitely end up becoming prom king. Although they have some reservations about the idea, after Yukino questions Iroha on why she wants to plan such a massive undertaking, she becomes satisfied when Iroha tells her she is planning the prom not just to make others happy. Yukino agrees to help, but emphasizes that since she made the decision to help by herself, and not as the service club president, Yui and Hachiman don't have to help plan the event. In the evening, Yui goes to her room and thinks back to something from yesterday. When she was alone in Yukino's room, she saw a photo of Yukino and Hachiman from their trip to Destiny Land hidden among some stuffed animals on Yukino's bed. Yui realizes she's known for a while how Yukino feels about Hachiman, and acknowledges her own feelings for him but feels like she can't do anything about it. Later at school, the results of the recent exams are released. After catching Hachiman yawning in class, Seika scolds Hachiman and tells him not to stay up too late. He teases him about worrying Yui and Yukino to Hachiman's embarrassment, although Hachiman tells him that the service club activities aren't in session. Suddenly, Hachiman gets a text from Komachi and he quickly rushes to the results of the entrance exams. Alongside Seika, he runs to Komachi and she tells him she scored well enough to get into his high school, and she bursts into tears of happiness. Meanwhile, Saki is celebrating with her little brother Teishi nearby, who also has got into Sabu High. Yui arrives to congratulate Komachi, and the two of them plan to share the news with Yukino. Later, Iroha approaches Hachiman to try to get his help in setting up the prom. Yukino has been helping Iroha a lot for the prom, but Hachiman tells Iroha not to rely on her too much since Yukino has a stubborn personality and limited stamina, which means she could push herself to exhaustion. After teasing him for being overprotective of Yukino, Iroha makes another attempt to get his help by acting as his younger sister to his embarrassment. Eventually, at the end of the day, he decides to help and he joins the rest of them to plan the event. With the prom planning committee formed, they come up with different plans to get students who wouldn't normally attend a social event like this to come. They also tell him of their plan to film a promotional video to promote prom with the help of all their friends. Since there are a lot of people, Hachiman hopes to just disappear in the background of the video, though when he dresses up for the video, he finds Yukino also wearing a suit for the video. The video relies on pairs of dancing students who are dressed up like they are going to prom, with Yukino paired up with Iroha, and Hachiman paired with Yui. Meanwhile, Yui and Hachiman share a moment together in the dressing room. Unfortunately, after the video is recorded, Yukino and Iroha critique the footage and aren't happy with the results. They ask Hachiman and Yui to be the main dancers in the video, even though the two of them are a little uncomfortable to be in the spotlight. Though with the support of their friends, the two of them are able to get over their nerves and dance. Later, as the students celebrate the filming, an impressed Hachiman observes his fellow students having fun and admits that prom might not be a bad idea after all. The video to promote the prom is a hit, and after the meeting, Yui helps Hachiman pick a gift for his sister to celebrate her successful entrance into Sabu High School. While they are shopping, Hachiman gets a little embarrassed when Yui takes a cute selfie of them together, and near the end of their trip, They end up talking about their dreams for the future, but both of them can't make up their mind about what they want to do after high school. The next day at school, Iroha gives them dire news and summons them to the principal's office. There they find out from Yukino's mom that certain parents are against the idea of a prom and are attempting to stop the event. Iroha tries to argue that the students have responded well to the idea of prom and that the social media attention has been good, but her arguments are ignored. Yukino decides that she wants to handle this problem alone, to the protest of both Yui and Hachiman. Haruno scolds them and tells them to respect Yukino's wishes to try to handle the issue herself, and to give her some independence. Later, Haruno tells Hachiman that she wants to lessen the codependency that Yukino has with him and Yui, even though this leaves the two of them really worried for their friend. Unfortunately, even though Yukino tries, they eventually get the news through social media that prom is likely to be cancelled. And this news is confirmed by Hachiman's teacher, Shizuka Hiratsuka, who tells him that the school's higher-ups are secretly trying to cancel the prom. On his way to meet Yukino to give her the bad news, Iroha stops him. Later, he talks to Yukino about her involvement in the prom, even though she still doesn't want to depend on him to become more self-reliant, and tells her that he wants to do what he can to save it, as he feels bad about his low involvement with the planning so far. Later, when they are alone, Iroha apologizes to Hachiman for all the trouble the prom has caused, but he tells her that it's alright. When he asks why she is so fixated on having prom, Iroha eventually reveals that she wanted to hold the prom for the benefit of their teacher Shizuka, who will be transferring to a different school this year. The prom would actually be a farewell address to their teacher as well as all of the graduating students, which would include Hachiman, Yukino, and Yui. And after telling him that farewells could be a refreshing experience, she orders him to get his act together before she leaves. That evening, Hachiman chats with his sister, Komachi, about the different events for graduation and the different ways that schools have their farewell experiences. The next day, he shares his plan with Yui and gets some help and tells her that he has created a competition between himself and Yukino. The two of them go to a cafe to come up with an idea, and they get the idea to create another prom that would make the original prom look good in comparison. This way, the parents would go with the original prom if they saw there was a terrible alternative. They end up spending several hours together coming up with a terrible prom proposal, and while researching in a cafe, Yui falls asleep on Hachiman's shoulder wishing the day would go on forever. But Yui is faking that she is asleep, because even though she feels happy to be with Hachiman now, she feels that the trio's friendship is just a lie that they are telling themselves, and that the truth is Hachiman will eventually end up with Yukino. She hopes that when school ends, the final climactic moment will happen between her and Yukino, which will conclude the three of them dancing around their issues. Later, Hachiman puts into action his plan for a terrible prom proposal, and gets help from the gaming club. To make their plan more believable, Yui and Hachiman meet with Orimoto and Taminoa from Keihan Sogo High School, and the guys have a friendly rap battle together. After choosing a project name and working on a website, Hachiman talks casually with Yukino outside and she tells him there's no reason for him to go so far for this. Meanwhile, Yui tells Yukino that she intends to help Hachiman with his idea. Later, Hayato Hayama tells Hachiman that he can't back his pretend prom idea even though they are friends. Hachiman moves forward with his plan, and the website for the fake prom plan is launched. In the aftermath, Shizuka and Hachiman have to talk with an unexpected friend who figured out his phony plan, and Yui is upset by Haruno's earlier comment about Hachiman, Yukino, and herself being too reliant on each other. Hachiman goes to visit Yukino when the fate of the prom is decided, and she makes an unexpected request, asking him to fulfill one of her wishes. Later, she talks with Yui, who finally admits her true feelings for Hachiman even if it could spell trouble between the three friends. As the graduation prom party approaches, Hachiman keeps his promise to Yukino. He's willing to fulfill any wish of Yui's as long as it's within his power. Yui has many wishes but also wants to grant a wish to Hachiman as well. At school, Yukino mentions that planning the prom involves a lot of organizing, but she turns down Hachiman's offer to assist. On the next sari, Yui asks Hachiman to help bake treats for his younger sister, Komachi. Later, the graduation ceremony begins, and it becomes a very emotional affair for Meguri, the student council president, to see the class nearly complete their school years together. On the night of the graduation prom, Hachiman has the realization that he can't say no when people need his help. And later that evening, Yui asks him for a dance. After the prom, the team gathers in the student council's room, and Yukino's mother and Haruno pay them a visit. When everyone else leaves, Yui, Yukino, and Hachiman have a heartfelt conversation together about the feelings between the trio. Afterwards, Hachiman goes to talk to Haruno and gets some advice from her. His teacher, Shizuka Hiratsuka, offers to drive him home because it's late, and they end up talking at a baseball batting range. Shizuka tells Hachiman that you can't sum up feelings with just one word, like codependence. However, Hachiman feels that his relationship with the girls is fake because they don't communicate honestly with each other. After school, he talks with Yui about the service club coming to an end and expresses his desire to keep being around Yukino, which makes Yui very sad. Iroha challenges the gaming club about a prom that doesn't involve the student council, not realizing Hachiman is behind it. Hachiman then meets with Yukino, her mother, and her sister. Afterward, Hachiman and Yukino have a long talk on a bridge, trying to express their feelings despite their difficulties with communication and social skills. Later, Hachiman and Yukino get together to plan a prom with other schools, but they have little time, not enough help, and a tight budget. They visit a possible prom location, and misunderstand each other when they see a wedding. The next day, more people than expected show up to assist, and later, the guys take a break and relax at a sauna. While they're getting the ballroom ready, Hachiman's sister, Komachi, arrives, and Iroha gives romantic advice to Yui, who's still sad about what happened between her and Hachiman. After the event, Hachiman and Yukino finish things up, and she surprises him with a confession that leaves him speechless. In the aftermath, Komachi and Iroha drop by the service club and announce their intentions to revive the club again so they can help other students around their school. And the first student they can help is Yui, who is mirroring the first time she arrived at the club when it was just Hachiman and Yukino, and has the first official request to the new service club. And this is all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.